Guys, we're really excited to host these speaker series and have all of you guys join us today. And our guest today is Joe Harrington. Joe's will always be tied to the Boston or Eastern Mass area, as his family is from the North Shore area, and he graduated from Tufts University. But even though he grew up in Washington, D.C., he's got ties here. He was a pitcher and infielder for Tufts, the Tufts baseball team. He's worked for the Red Sox a couple of times, and is now the assistant director of minor league operations in the player development department of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So very cool to have Joe here. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So before we dive into some of your guys' questions, because I know you guys have some, I want to start off this conversation and kick off the discussion by going back a few years with you, Joe, and seeing, obviously you've been tied to baseball your whole life. When did you kind of start playing? When did you fall in love with the game? Were you these guys' age, or were you younger? Walk us through that.
For sure. So my parents joked that they had a ball and bat like in my hand from when I was a baby. But I think it all started in preschool. I was the one kid who refused to nap. So my dad had to come from work and take me out, and he would just throw me a ball, like fly balls. Basically, picture playing fetch with your dog. He'd basically just throw it, and I'd have to go get it to keep me entertained. But so I think that was the hook. But then, as I'm sure all three of you guys had your favorite players growing up. For me, when I was younger, that was Nomar Garciaparra. I basically thought I was him. I think for me originally, like had his shirt, would wear it to practice every day. Would practice the plays he did too. So that's kind of what my initial hook was. And then, over time, it's just, as you guys know, the competitive aspect of baseball. And then, I was fortunate enough to play with a lot of great teammates who are still my best friends today. So those two aspects together, combined, really motivated me to want to stick with it throughout the rest of my life. So.
That's awesome. And how did you get into kind of the business side of sport? I know you interned with the Red Sox for a little bit, and you came back. But can you talk us through how you kind of broke into that industry? Knowing that that's kind of almost like a fallback because you maybe weren't going to make the majors, but having that idea of, hey, I still want to be involved in sport.
For sure. Well, definitely wasn't going to make the majors. Was not as good as a lot of these other guys. But for me, it started in college, and I think as you guys will, potentially hear, like people say, like breaking into the game is kind of the toughest thing to do. I guess my journey started. I sent an application to the Red Sox and actually got denied right away when I was a freshman. So. That was kind of humbling to, realize like the hard work you have to put in. And then for me, it started actually my junior year. I got hurt, blew out my arm, and then stopped playing. And at that point, I think when you have the game taken away from you, it causes you to, sit back and reflect about what you like the most. And for me, like dealing with, the injury and not being able to play anymore was pretty tough. So I, decided that I wanted to get into baseball and, see if I could do what I could learn and how to help help younger players not fall into that same scenario, right? Whether it be like injury wise or just helping them get better so they can play as long as, they could and really see it out as far as they can. As Mick said, I reapplied to the Red Sox my junior year of college, was fortunate enough to get a job as a Fenway ambassador, which I don't know if you guys have talked with any of them so far, but basically like, picture like during the games you interact a lot with the fans and try to create memorable ballpark experiences for them. Work the lost and found. You're the ones answering the phone and working the front door. So really it was awesome to see like you get to walk into Fenway and call it your office. Like that's the coolest thing in the world, right? And then throughout it though, realize that for me at least, I wanted to keep the actual baseball side of the game part of my job. So there's a big difference between, working on the business side and then working on the baseball side too. And I just knew for me personally, I wanted to work on the baseball side. And then through a couple relationships at Tufts, was fortunate to get an internship with the Rays. So for them, basically filmed all their minor leaguers to start, and got to travel with their AAA team. And then the following year, I was an advanced scouting intern. So what that means is picture like, if you guys ever had an open book test where you get to like prepare a cheat sheet, your teacher's like, so basically every team too, before every series, they have a group of people who provides them with a cheat sheet for the game with a breakdown of like what to expect on every player and situation. So I got to help out with that process. And it was a great learning experience that year. And then at the end of that year, I was fortunate to get a offer with the Dodgers in player development, which, again, going back to like having like my injury and knowing I wanted to help players was kind of like the ideal, scenario for me. So I was fortunate that came up at that time. And
I'll ask one more before I open it up. I have tons of questions, but I'll do one more. We know, myself and you know that working in sports, there's no 2 days that are the same. But what are the typical roles and duties that you have in your role, throughout the days, the weeks, the months of your job?
For sure. I guess to kick that off, I'll kick it over to you, Julia, Malik, and Gabriel. What do you guys know what player development is, or what's your sense of what that department is? Do you have any guesses?
Is it almost like basketball, almost like a G League type thing? Like it's like the players that are trying to make it to the MLB, but they're like not there yet, but you're like the one to help them get there.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, like you think of the NFL draft or the NBA draft, right? Those guys get drafted, and you see them playing like, a couple months later. The MLB is the one sport that's really different, right? So they'll have the draft where the guys are either coming out of high school or college, or even signed. So if you're an international player, you can sign when you're 16 years old. So Malik, in 2 years, you could be signing, right? If you were in the Dominican or something like that. So basically, in player development, our job is to work with kind of once that signing starts. So once someone's either drafted or signed, that process until hopefully they reach the major leagues, we're trying to help aid that path in between there. So it's coming up with plans to help them with their goals, as a player, and help them get, better at, some of the skills that, we think they're going to need to improve at to be able to play at the top level, if that makes sense.
So do you do like an evaluation on them almost?
Yeah. So that's one of the cool things that we do is for all our players, right? So every player that we have, guess how many players that we have that are in a system that aren't on the major league team?
Like 40 something or above?
Like 300?
Closer. It's over. Depends on the team a little bit, but think over 200 players, right? So there's almost 200 guys who are working, to reach that 25-man roster that we see on TV all the time. But so one of the things that we do is we try to take an individualized approach. So for each player, right, we'll come up with a plan for them, and we'll ask ourselves 3 questions usually. Where's the player been? How did they get to where they are today, right? Where are they now? So what do they need to work on? And then where do we see them going in the future? And kind of using those 3 questions, we'll try to figure out if we can come up with, a couple specific goals for them to work on that year that we think over like 5 years time will help, lead to the stepping stones that they need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's really like the long run effort.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Baseball is definitely one of the, from the time that, if you're drafted in as a senior in high school, right? So if you're, Gabriel, you're graduating this year, right? If you're graduating at 18, the most players, it's starting to get a little younger now, but for a long time, most players didn't get into the MLB until they were 24, 25, right? So even there, that's a period of like up to 6 years that you can be, practicing and going, through the different levels to get there. Do you guys know about the different, like how many levels there are to get up to the major leagues?
Mm.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's almost like high school in some sense, right? And you picture college as like the major leagues that, you have freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. But we have all the way from rookie ball in Arizona. We have our short season affiliates. Then you have to go to high A, double A, triple A, and then finally after triple A, you can reach the majors. So it's almost like, another high school trajectory of sorts. Put it in
So
your
once
terms.
you get like your players, and so did they do all that? Did they do like all those sequences, or did they just come straight to you?
So it depends. So as player development, it kind of encompasses all those levels, right? So we help oversee all of those different teams. And then different players will start off at different levels. So I'll provide a couple examples. So on the lowest end, if you take someone who signs from, say, the Dominican Republic, they can sign at 16 years old, right? So we don't necessarily want a 16-year-old playing against 24-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
So they'll usually stay. We have a complex in the Dominican where they'll play for a couple years, and then hopefully make the transition stateside. And then from high school players, we'll usually start off in Arizona because there's more time and again to ramp up the competition. Whereas some players, if they played in college for 3 years at the top conference, they can go straight to high A. So it kind of just depends on the player, right?
Yeah. So do you like go to these different places, or do you just stay like in one spot?
Pretty much living out of a hotel a lot of the times. Kind of one of the coolest parts of the job is that if you look for us, it kind of depends where your teams are, but we have teams in Michigan, in Oklahoma, like I said, the Dominican Republic, Arizona, California, and then that's only where our stadiums are. And then sometimes if you go see them on the road, right, you can go to all the other stadiums. So over the past couple of years, the amount of small random cities in the U.S. that have got to travel to is climbing up there. But it's awesome. I mean, you just get to every week you get to see a different part of the country and talk to different people, which is really cool to for yourself just to see a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
Is the business aspect like a little more centered in a certain place, or would you say it's kind of similar to the baseball part?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The business part usually is focused at the stadium, right? So like for the Red Sox, the business department, and Mick would probably know more about this too, is just based like they'll have a bunch of offices in Fenway too. So like when you go to a game in Fenway, if you look up on the left field line, that brick wall behind all the stands, there's actually a ton of offices in there. So there's a door that you need a key to get into because they don't want everyone, walking through with their popcorn. But yeah, the business is usually focused more just at the stadium, and then also, but they'll have to get out into the community with contracts and everything. So it's a little bit different.
What like players, like what if you had considered like some of the players that you like worked with at the highest, who would you consider?
So to answer that question, I'm not the one, probably like actually working with them too much. That's we have a team of like incredible coaches within our department. So they're the ones that have are the ones actually working with them in the cages or in the bullpens all the time. But I mean, when you if you look at a couple of our players, I don't know if you know. Have you heard the names Gavin Lux, Dustin May at all?
Yeah.
So there were two rookies last year that came up, and so I was actually with both of them for a season in Great Lakes with our Michigan affiliate. So it was cool to see them from all the way from signing at one of the lower levels, and then you see them going on to TV, so you can kind of see that full trajectory. But then I mean, I'm sure you guys love, Mookie Betts. Got to see him at spring training up close with, Belly and everyone else. So, I mean, the awesome part is that, at spring training and when you're at the field, you get to see these guys really up close, whether it's taking batting practice or in the weight room. And, you sit there in awe of, how good they are.
Yeah. That's cool.
What do you think, like, you said, like, the traveling is, like, probably one of your favorite parts, but other than that, what do you think is, like, your greatest takeaway from this job?
The relationships, without a doubt. The people you get to meet. I don't know about you guys, but for me, like, until I graduated college, I didn't travel that much. I spent, summers going to baseball tournaments and whatnot, and would just always come up to Massachusetts to go to the beach. Like, that was my only vacation. But then, like, within this job, even only, 4 years, you get to, you form relationships with, people from the Dominican Republic. One of the staff members I'm closest with is from Japan, and you just you meet people from all over the country and really all over the world. They come with, different educational backgrounds, different economic backgrounds, and just come with different perspectives. So I think in that process of meeting new people, it forces you to see some other perspectives and just like, what you've always known and what you're comfortable with. And I think that helps you come up with like your own beliefs or what you believe in. So just that, like, kind of that self-discovery aspect and, work getting to be on a team with people from so many different backgrounds is extremely, lucky to get, and you don't get that in every job.
What does like a day of work looks like for you?
Yeah. So the one part is with player development, every day different stuff is coming up. So again, we have, if you can imagine, we have 200 plus players. On top of that, we have 80 plus staff members and coaches. So, you're working, to help with the oversight with all those guys. But a couple specific things that come up are one, player education, right? So I think some of you guys might have heard of, some of the like new statistics that are out there and whatnot. But basically one thing that we feel strongly about is we want to make sure that all of our players know how they're being evaluated. So, for example, you could be one task of the day that could come up is sitting down with a player and explaining some of these different statistics that we, believe in or place value in, so they know, what they're being measured on, and they can work to come up with goals for themselves. So that's one idea. Another end is on the staff side too. We have an incredible staff, so a lot of times we're looking for, resources that we can give them to, help them, potentially become, better coaches, better communicators, and whatnot, and just kind of increase the tools in the tool belt. So a lot of it is trying to take a lot of the information that we have and, provide it in a way that, relates to everyone in a way that, is digestible to them. And then you get to watch baseball every day too, so that's not that bad. Getting paid to sit behind home plate and watch baseball, that's a perk of the job for sure.
That's cool.
Do you get to choose your spot?
Where I sit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I make sure not to sit in the seats of where my bosses will be sitting. But other than that, a lot of times too, a lot of the places that we'll play at, I mean, even in Arizona, so that rookie season, you're not getting you're not getting the sellouts that you'd be getting at Fenway all the time, right? Like it's even just like wooden, like grass areas and wooden benches behind. So there's plenty of space to find, but in the Arizona summer, you just look for the shade. No one wants to be sitting in 115-degree weather.
Yeah. Do you still like play, like in an adult league or anything?
Yeah. So if you call it playing, the way my arm works right now, it does it. not the most visually appealing motion, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the best parts about our org is that, they really encourage everyone to get out there and mix it up with the players. So, during BP, I'll get out there and shag fly balls too. So get to, stay active that way. And, on the flip side there too, that's one of the best times to, form those relationships with the players too. You think about, you guys have all done it when you're just standing in the outfield and waiting for guys to hit. You can go and kind of work your way around, stand next to guys, say, hey, what's going on? And it might only be 5-10 minutes or so, but you can start to, learn more about them personally too, which, I think is really step one of, building trust and, the forming an ability to, work, together going forward. Right.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, so for the players you work with, what do you say one thing you took in the most from them?
Took in the most. I think that one, probably the biggest thing is that in order to reach the MLB, just the amount of competitiveness and self-discipline that these guys have is pretty remarkable. You get to watch. One of the cool things is that when you come and watch a game at Fenway, right, or wherever, right, you see the 9 innings there, but it doesn't show all the hard work that those guys put in to be able to perform like that on a nightly basis. Like, what time, if you had to guess what time do you think, who's your favorite player in the league?
Pedro Martinez.
Pedro? Okay, so if you get awesome pitcher, by the way. But so guess what time if there's a 7 p.m. game that night, what time do you think those guys are getting to the ballpark?
So I think they'll probably get there 5, 4.
A lot of them will get there at 12 p.m., 12 or 1.
Jeez.
So imagine that. The game starts at 7. They're getting there 7 hours ahead of time, right? And before every game, a lot of them, they're going in, they're doing their weightlifting, they're going to the medical staff to do their prep work, they're meeting with their coaches to go over the game plan for tonight and to, whether look at the opposing pitcher. So if I was facing Pedro that night, they would sit down and say, all right, he's going to throw, 96 mile an hour fastball here with a disgusting changeup. So to get an idea of what they're going to face that night. And then also they're going out for pregame batting practice, pregame infield, their bullpen and whatnot. So, I mean, their workday ahead of the game is oftentimes, twice as long as the actual game itself. And then imagine doing that basically every day, or 162 days out of 180. So in order to do that and, stay that consistent, in self-discipline, takes a certain, type of, competitiveness and, hard work. So I think that for me is just, will always have so much respect for, what these guys are able to do, day in and day out.
All right. So we're coming up on 4 o'clock. So we'll get a couple more questions in if Joe, you're okay to stay for a couple more minutes. And then I've got 2 that I want to ask you before we head out. But anyone else have any last questions for Joe?
Not that I know of right now.
No? All right. Well, Joe, I've got 2 for you. So first, all of these guys I know very well, but a lot of our kids have huge dreams, and they're following their dreams and trying to reach their dreams. I still haven't reached my dreams, and I work for a club, and I love it. What about you? What's next? What are your dreams? And what do you hope to take on next?
For sure. Yeah. So I think going off Mick's point there, I think, wherever you're at in life, I think it's really important to, continue to have goals for yourself, right? Always pushing yourself to, want to improve. So, I think the more you guys can start to, kind of approach it like that now will suit you later on. For me, personally, I don't get too caught up in titles, per se, of saying I want to get to this position. It's more of, experiences and the environment that I want to be in going forward. So, I mean, first and foremost, in the immediate future, want to do my, small part to, help our team contribute to a World Series. There's this one team, I can't remember, that, beat the Dodgers 2 years ago. It starts with a B. So, I mean, helping, I think as an entire organization, that's something that we're working towards to achieve there. So again, doing my small part there is on the immediate future. And then on the flip side too, for me, another aspect that I'm passionate about is education. So as I move forward, for me, I want to figure out a way to harness our relationship with our team to help out or work with adolescents in the city to pair sports and education together, to use that as a vehicle to promote individual growth and within the community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then finally, I think this is a great question all around. What advice would you give these players, all of our players, and the number of players that are looking to go out and reach their dream of playing at the next level, or what can they do today to help them?
Before I get into that, I'll turn it over to you guys. What are you guys doing currently? Julia, what do you got?
What do you mean by currently?
So what do you do to become a better baseball and softball player for yourself? Or not, maybe not given the corona aspect, when you can be outside and whatnot.
Yeah. I think I'm just trying to keep as active as I can, go on as many walks, and just try and make sure like my head is clear also, because I feel like there have been times during this pandemic where I've kind of gotten myself down. So I'm just trying to keep up mentally and physically, trying to stay as healthy as I can by choosing the right things to eat and working out a lot. And so yeah, those are my goals. Just keep, like, I guess I agree with what you're saying about like striving for self-improvement. That's definitely one of my goals for this situation and the time I have here.
Awesome. What about you, Malik?
I've been doing like a lot of push-ups before I go to sleep. Been like going on walks, eating, like making sure like I have like a healthy diet, stuff like that.
Cool. What about you, Gabriel?
I made myself a home gym in the basement, so I've been going down there every day, and I just started learning how to skateboard, so I've been trying to get into that a little bit, but I've been getting busted up a little bit. So
yeah, me too. Actually, I have been skating too. That's funny.
That's awesome.
But I've also been getting out onto the field as much as I can, so I've been out here maybe like 2 days a week. Playing catch with my brother, because that's the only person I can play catch with. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are on the right track already. I'd give you all three pieces of advice though. Number one, even if baseball is in your future where you want to pursue, the number one piece of advice would be to keep playing other sports. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but I think the number one thing that we can all do, especially at this age, is you want to become an all-around athlete first, right? If you can become an all-around athlete first, then it becomes easier to specialize in baseball later on. And some of those skills that you learn in other sports, you can't necessarily attack as well in baseball. So they'll help you become a better baseball player, even though it sounds counterintuitive. Second one is in terms of goals, I'd focus on having them be more centered around creating good habits. So, I'm sure you guys have heard this before too, but it's easy to say, all right, I want to hit 300, or I want to have 10 home runs. But like Malik said, if you could say, hey, like I want to do 50 push-ups before I go to bed every night, or I want to go to bed at 11 p.m. every night. Coming up with those habits, those are going to be what over time, really lead to long-term improvement, right? And not just these short spurts of like, oh, I did something, but then falling off. And last but not least, and which I believe is most important, is learn to love practice. You think about baseball, right? think about how many at bats do you actually, or how many ground balls in a baseball game are you going to get? If you're at shortstop, there's 27 outs. If you're playing 9 innings, you might get 4 or 5 ground balls, right? And you're getting, you're getting your 3 or 4 at bats. So baseball is the one game that in the game itself, you're not actually getting that many reps. In order to become a better baseball player, I think we all need to learn to really love practice and figuring out for ourselves, what is it I need to work on? And then, targeting deliberate reps. So getting specific about, what's going to target that area, and then just increasing the number that we do. To help expedite your own skill level. So those would be the three pieces that I'd give you guys.
Awesome. That's fantastic, Joe. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know it's a little crazy now, but seriously, thank you. We really appreciate it, and we can't thank you enough.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe.
Great talking with you guys. And Malik, Julia, and Gabriel, if you guys think of any other questions, feel free to fire them, mixed way. And then I'm sure we'll, figure out a way to get them to you at some point too. So don't hesitate to reach out if anything else pops up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Cool, thank you so much. Yeah.
Great meeting you guys.
All right.
Great meeting you too.
All right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
You said-
Bye, guys.
Bye.